Audio. All right. So we are now live. Let me bring up the comments here. Hey, Leo. How you doing, bud? Let me still just twiddling with my settings here. Let me know if my audio sounds okay. I think it should. Let's see. I'm going to try one thing here. Sorry, before we get going, I'm kind of slow moving this morning. I want to see if this. Do you still hear me? Okay, so that should be good. Okay. Hi from Germany. What time is it right now in Germany? So it's 11 a.m. here in Los Angeles time. So in Germany, I would imagine it'd be in the middle of the night sometime. So thanks for joining instead of sleeping. All right. So this live stream is meant to be a recap of the first 30 days of 2023. And so what I have been doing lately is a series along with Jeremy Deal about how real estate photography is going to be different in 2023. And the reason for this is because we all know, all of us in this business know, that over the past quarter or so, it has been extraordinarily slow. And the reason for that, and this is one of the things that I'm going to get into with the podcast here, is that it's been a combination of interest rates rising, and especially in my area, in California, unaffordability. And those two things kind of coming together has put a damper on the buyer activity. So the fourth quarter of last year, so the fourth quarter of 2022, hey, King Krut Gaming, how you doing? Uh, was my worst quarter in 4 years, and it really hurt. It was nice at first because I had had such a strong spring to take that break, and indeed, a few weeks into it, when I had now had more time to spend with my family and such, I would tell people, "Hey, this is pretty nice. I'm enjoying this time off." Now, if it continues for another few weeks, when the money starts mattering, I might have a bit of a different opinion on it. And it did. It continued for not just another few weeks, but another few months. And so that's when the money started to matter. I got a little bit sketched out about it. But the other part of this, though, is I knew in the back of my mind, and I still do, that this market is going to pick up. And why do I say that? Well, I'm old enough to now remember, because I participated in it as a homeowner, the crash of 2008. Ever since 2008, what we do as real estate photographers, we've only ever known a strong real estate market. And by that, I mean this: the way that we go out and we photograph homes. And so the modern version of that is we're compositing stills. Using digital cameras, we're compositing stills. We are doing 3D Matterport type of tours. We are doing cinematic video. Okay, all of that is really only a few years old, less than 10. And it just so happens in the 10 years that our craft has come to maturation, it has always been a very strong market to work within. So now we have this set of circumstances that could kind of challenge that. But I think it's important for us to kind of take a look back at 2008 and either draw some parallels or show the differences between the market conditions in 2008 and the market conditions right now in late 2022, early 2023. So in 2008, It was very, very different, okay? It was like it was in this past slowdown in only one way, and that is that the prices have been accelerating for so long, and in the case of 2008, it was kind of the rebound after the tech crash of the year 2000, and everything started kind of picking back up. Prices were accelerating very quickly. Now, what happened then that is not happening now, and this is an extraordinarily important distinction, is that lending became irresponsible. And so anybody who could fog a mirror not only could get a loan in this 2005 or so period, but it would actually be at a pretty good deal too. And there were loans that were being funded where the borrowers absolutely were not qualifying for this money. And not only were they not qualifying for this money, but like I said, they were getting a very good deal on it. And not only that, but they typically would not even need any money down into this loan. So even though that's problematic enough because the implications there are obvious. If the market ever corrects downward, the borrower does not have any money into the loan. They are automatically underwater with the value of their home. But the other thing that was happening is the prices were going up so drastically that the lending was getting very creative. So not only was it very loose in the standards that they were borrowing, letting the people borrow the money for, but they were doing things like adjustable rate loans with a teaser rate, which is only a couple percent. Okay, so you would pay only a couple percent in interest in for the first, let's say, 3 years or 5 years, and then it would adjust to the market rate beyond that. Now, here's the problem, and this is what a lot of people didn't realize about that. The loan itself is actually like a 5 to 7% loan or so at the time. And so your teaser rate that's a couple percent, the full interest is still being paid. Okay, but you're only paying a couple percent of that. The remainder of that interest is amortizing on the back end of the loan. And so your indebtedness on this property is actually growing. Now, that is especially problematic if at the same time the value of it is decreasing. And that's what happened in 2008. In 2008, a couple things occurred. Um, First, the time that these loans were at that teaser rate, that first kind of threshold, the first people who got into it and it said this is a 3-year teaser rate, that started to unwind. Okay, and so all of a sudden, the 1.5% these people are paying for their home loan jumps up to the market rate, which is about 6 or 7% at the time. It shouldn't be a big deal if they were loaning money to people responsibly, but this was irresponsible lending, irresponsible borrowing going on, and in an environment where affordability was very stretched, and that's an environment like we see ourselves in right now, that's a problem. So when that payment goes up, and somebody who's used to, spending $2,000 a month for their home now has to spend $2,500 a month for their home, um, people were losing homes. Okay, so that's the first thing that happened. And I'm getting to the parallel between that and now too. I'm just laying the foundation. So that's the first thing that happened. So um the second thing that happened with that is in the secondary mortgage market. Okay, now mortgages are traded as investments by institutional investors. And so what started happening is these investors had been packaging these junk mortgages, okay, and they're junk because remember they were not based on anything solid. Is irresponsible lending happening? They were packaging those junk mortgages along with all kinds of other things. Okay, so when people started defaulting on these junk mortgages, what would happen is it would unwind all these other sectors and the whole market crashed. And it was a slippery slope, right? Everything matters to everything else. Real estate dives. Now, all of a sudden, you have somebody who never had any equity in their home to begin with, sitting on a property that's worth 30, 50% less in some areas than when they borrowed on it And what do? They start walking away, so now we have all these distressed properties, and on and on and on and on. So that's what happened in 2008. Now, jumping ahead to where we are right now in 2023, it is very important for all of us to realize as we're talking about this, how real estate photography is going to be different in 2000, excuse me, in 2023, that is not happening. What happened in 2008 to cause that crash is not happening. Our economy right now is fundamentally stable. Lending and borrowing right now are fundamentally stable. When you have somebody borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars plus on a home right now, that person is qualified to borrow that money. They're out there working. Not only that, but that person has in 99% of the time right now, this is the way that lending works right now, has skin in the game already. They already have equity in this home that they're borrowing against, unlike 2008. Okay, so I just wanted to go over that, because I don't know who my audience for these things are. And especially with younger people who did not live live out the live action part of this in 2008, it's easy to get trapped into just watching a bunch of YouTubers saying, "Oh my gosh, this is the same thing that happened 10 years." It is nothing like what happened 10 years ago, and it is much less severe. And that's one of the reasons that I have always been cautiously optimistic when our business as real estate photographers goes down, and I still am. So let me get into the ugly part of this here real quick, and then we're going to get into the comments. Um, my business so we're talking about the first 30 days of 2023 here. My business year over year from last January, so January 2022 to January 2023, is about 50% down. That's is a problem, but it's not hugely problematic because you have to realize January is one of the slowest months in this business anyway. And so it's so slow typically in January that a few flyers, one way or the other, are going to move the sticks. So if I have a big commercial job and I didn't have a big commercial job last January, well, hey, I'm already 50% up or down or whatever, right? And so there's not a lot that happens anyway. I still am out there working. I'm getting the calls. I actually had, um, as far as just real estate shoots go, I had like 6 or 8 or whatever last week. And so that was a big kind of pop for January. And then this week so far, I've got nothing scheduled. So, you know, but it's weird, it's weird and it's spotty and everything. And it's about 50% down overall, from last January. I've always thought, and I still do, that when we come into spring here, that's going to be very telling on whether this is going to be a larger trend, that our business is going to remain down for a while, or if it's going to pick back up. But I'm cautiously optimistic. I already see a pickup, and that happened about the middle of December, where it was spooky quiet for a couple months there, starting in like October or so. I mean, it was just, not normal. And that's when, the interest rates really started rising and such too. But I already saw a pickup in early December, or well, I should say late December, and then another bump like last week in mid-January. So, so there's stirring. It's not just a nosedive. And I think this spring is gonna be very telling. So let me get into some of the comments here. Okay, let's see. All right. Leo, sound is very good. Thank you for that, bud. It's 8 p.m. So Leo is in Germany. So 8 p.m. in Germany. So I always wonder when is best to do these live streams. And so so I'm glad that you're able to join here. Let's see, King Krut Gaming. How you doing, bud? So it's good to see you as always. So he's one of the guys who's usually around, and this guy has I would love for you to do some at some point a presentation about what you think about cameras because he has a lot of different cameras. And so, whenever I start saying, "Oh, I have this or I have that," "Oh yeah, I've got one of those." He says, "Okay, let's see, Leo. Winter time is often difficult." Yeah, so it's like that for you too, huh? Now German, okay. I don't know a whole lot about Germany, but I know that winter is very, very different than winter here in California. So I would imagine winter in Germany is extraordinarily cold, and people are not going out to do much of anything anyway. Home run trot, another familiar face. Let me make this a little bit bigger in my feed here. There we go. I was in fintech mortgage lending over the past couple of years. This isn't 2008 at all. That's so true. The market is far more stable, and that's really the thing, and so it's important, I think, too. Like I said, YouTube has become such a platform for people who want an audience, and there are a lot of people right now on YouTube that, in just my opinion, are doing this irresponsibly. And I don't know if they absolutely believe that the sky is falling here, but when you look at the fundamental economics of the United States, anyway, understanding that we have a German amongst us here too, and I have no idea what it's like in Germany, but if you look at the fundamental economics of the United States, especially considering we are coming out of an unprecedented time in history with the pandemic, our economy is fundamentally very solid. It really is. That is a huge difference between this and especially the irresponsible borrowing, irresponsible lending that was happening in 2008. And that's a difference that really cannot be overstated. So, and so when you hear the people, hey, this is going to be sky is falling. It's not the case right now. Okay, let's see. Rob Turner. Hey, it's good to see you, Rob. Spending time off to get my video offering polished. But yes, spooky slow sounds right. Enjoyed it over the holidays, as that never happens. I enjoyed it over the holidays too, but I mean I will admit that, oh, a couple months into the spooky slow, which was about in December, when I should be enjoying the biggest time with my family, I started to get a little bit worried. My wife starts like picking up extra shifts and stuff, So yeah, I wish it would pick up a little bit from that, and it has, in fairness, it has, and I think, like I've said, I think spring will be very telling as to how how much or not it's going to pick up. Now, I had such a strong spring last spring in 2022 that I had to hire extra help. I was working 12 to 14-hour days, 6 days a week. I would be fine with it not being that strong this coming spring, because my hat is like crooked and it's driving me crazy. No, other way. I'm looking at myself in a mirror. Um, yeah, so I would like to spend a little bit more time with my family than just that. And so I'm surprised. You know what? I'm surprised with all you guys who are watching right now that this conversation hasn't gone to cameras yet. Doesn't have anybody have anything to say about cameras? That's usually where we go here. All right. And Rob Turner again. It's getting harder to enjoy, but I'm good. sold some investment real estate to pad the bank account. I know I sold I sold off. So, oh, here we go. Here's a good segue to cameras. I sold some camera gear to pad the bank account to kind of get through the dip here. So I sold my red Komodo, which is which is a topic that I am going to make a YouTube video about. It has to do really with me not needing a whole lot of cinema cameras and my requirements maybe being a little bit different now, uh, especially since I'm a little bit more experienced with being able to get the kind of image that I want to get out of a camera in camera. Okay, the Red Komodo is an amazing camera, and one of the biggest strengths with the Red Komodo is that the image straight out of camera is beautiful. You don't have to work for a beautiful image out of the Red Komodo at all. If you can't get a nice image out of the Red Komodo, then you should just give up. Um, but I'm better now at being able to get what I want to get out of a camera just on site. Without having to rely on the color science of red, which is amazing, or the flexibility of the R3 codec with the IPP2 workflow, which is amazing. I mean, that codec is nearly impossible to break. And I bought a pair of Canon C200s on fire sale, which is what I'm shooting on right now, a C200 with La Cucaracha, the 18 to 35 Sigma prop lens. So anyway, so the red, I sold the red Komodo, sold the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, and that one I truly just never used anyway. So I sold that, sold a couple lenses, sold a couple Sony bodies, and I have another video coming up that is a Sony versus Canon video. Surprise, surprise, right? And no, it's not clickbait, even though a lot of those are clickbait from other people. And that's all I'm going to say about that right now. Is I'm kind of walking back some of my opinions on the Sony versus Canon, just in general, and especially as it pertains to real estate photography. So, if you guys want to see what the thoughts are on that, then stay tuned. All right, Leo, how do you assess the AI development? It is becoming increasingly difficult for us photographers. I wish Jeremy Deal was in on this conversation right now because he's somebody who actually is doing AI art, so AI generated art that he's like posting and such. And I think I saw just recently a very interesting talk that Joe Rogan had a guest on who was talking about AI and just consciousness in general. And this is way too deep to get into on a live stream here. But really, okay, so framing it in real estate photography, I don't think we have really much to worry about AI yet. The only time I think that as real estate photographers, AI would make a difference to our profession is if somebody developed an app using a cell phone camera that is able, through computational photography AI, um, produce an image similar to what we are able to produce using the techniques that we do. And so that is uh, an enormous amount of dynamic range, right? And so most of us shooting real estate professionally are shooting flash ambient, I think. And so we're taking different exposures for the window exposure than we are for the inside exposure. That's something that the phones are already getting much better at, is they're kind of doing HDR and compositing it. And okay, so when you have something that is able to do that better than what it does right now, And by that, I mean it's able to more look like a flash shot. The colors are going to be more true than the smeary ghosting of HDR computational type of a product. And also, one that is going to guide the user into framing the shot properly. Okay, this is where the artistic of it, part of it becomes a bit more difficult for a machine to discern. You know, you can give the machine parameters, right? So, what is the golden spiral? What is the rule of thirds? And give it those parameters and say, okay, this is a good image. This is not a good image. And it can guide the user in doing that. It can also guide the user in saying, you're going to level it, with your verticals this way, horizontals that way. And we're going to do that for you too in post. So if somebody does develop an app that does all of that, it guides somebody on where to take a photograph of an interior, and then computationally and using artificial intelligence, um, gives it that huge amount of dynamic range and cleans it up, because that's a big reason that we use Flash is we clean up our colors. We introduce a variable hard light source to that, which sharpens everything up, right? So once phones can do that, and it would be foolish for us to sit here and say they're never going to be able to do that because that tech is moving really quick, you know. And so that is the only time that I would be concerned about AI. But right now, for instance, I'm 46 years old, 45 or I'm 40 something, 40 something old enough that I forgot how old I am. But I think I'm turning 46 or maybe it's 45. My point is, before I retire, I'm not worried about it. Some of you guys who are like 20 years old, might want to keep an eye on it. Just see. Okay, Rob Turner. I use Mid-Journey. AI is a great creative catalyst, terrible at finishing for now, right? And that's really the thing. It's not great at finishing. And not only that, but like I was saying, what we do as real estate photographers is so specific. It's so specific and it has a set of technical parameters that is unlike really anything else out there. And no AI that I've seen so far is really tuned to that. Um, but if there's money in it, like anything else, somebody will figure it out, right? Home run trot. Been shooting with a Sony A6000 since 2015. Want to upgrade after my wedding in April. After your wedding in April, congratulations. If I stick with Sony, what bodies would you suggest? If I switch to Canon, what camera bodies would you recommend? Well, A6000 since 2015. I'd be interested to know what lens you're using with that crop body too. So A6000 is it's a great camera for this. I know that Rich Baum uses an A6000 often with a 12 millimeter Samyang lens, which will give you approximately 18 millimeter perspective on that crop sensor. Um, if you stick with Sony, and right now that makes a lot of sense to do. I think the A7 IV should probably be your landing spot. Um, unless you want to pony up for the A1. And the A1 is a better camera than anything else out there in a few key ways. And one of the ones that I always bring up is the 1/400th of a second maximum mechanical flash sync and how that allows you to crank your ISO, thereby making your light much stronger. And then with that shutter speed, that 1/400th max, you're able to then control your window light to as better be able to balance your strobe exposure with your window light coming in. So the A1 right now is best at that. However, Okay, I always say, and this is true, that you date the bodies, you marry the lenses, right? And that's saying that these cameras all get from every manufacturer better every year. So what you're going to be left with when you invest in a system is the lenses. It's going to be the support gear. It's going to be how it works, And so that's when you come into, okay, so the finished image from an A6000 versus the finished image from an Alpha 1. If you're not using that 1/400th flash sync, um, capability of the Alpha 1, is there any difference between those two finished images when you're doing composites especially? I say no. There isn't, because it is going to depend on your technique as the photographer. It's gonna depend on your vision. It's gonna depend on if you outsource your editing, like a lot of us do. It's gonna depend on how good your editor is in merging those layers in Photoshop, and if that vision aligns with yours. But a finished image from an A6000, an interior composite image, anyway, is no different than a finished image from an Alpha 1 or a Canon or anything else. So then it becomes a matter of what are these tools like to work with? How are you working? So when I work with the Alpha 1, I am wirelessly tethered. 95% of the time, I'm wirelessly tethered. Now, the Sony bodies and the Sony Imaging Edge app make that very easy to do compared to the Canon bodies, R5, R5C. I went through a stint this past year where I was looking to see if I could replace my Sony kit with a Canon kit. And really the the reason for that is I like the RF lenses and I wanted to marry the lenses, right? But the Sony bodies right now, snapshot in time, 2023, are just better for this workflow. And a big there's two reasons for that. The big reason for that is that Imaging Edge app and how stable that app is, how fully featured that app is, where I can control everything from the camera body remotely. I can control what mode it's in, whether it's in manual or it's in aperture priority. I can control the focusing method, whether it be manual focus or tap to track focus. I can control, ISO and I can control the exposure stuff from there. With the Canon app is extraordinarily limited. You can't control most of those things within the Canon app. And so as it pertains to workflow, that's a point for the Sony. Another point for the Sony when it comes to the app especially is you can choose with the Sony for the app to preview the image to you or not. But more importantly, when the image is being downloaded and transmitted from the camera to the app on an iPad, you can keep shooting. So in real world workflows, this matters a lot, right? So I can take an Alpha 1 and I can, with my iPad, go shot, value, shot, adjust my values, shot. And I can go about that fast, right? If I want to do like a flash pop here, a flash pop there. Whereas with the Canon app, as it's downloading the image for you to preview, you lose the ability to do anything. You can't even adjust your values. It has a little slider on a scale on the bottom. And while it's still downloading that image and it takes a few seconds to do, you're absolutely it won't do that. So you'll say shot and then you'll try to adjust. Nope, doesn't take. Try to adjust, doesn't take. Try to okay, now the image is here. So you try to adjust it. Okay, now I can take a shot. And just that lag of a couple seconds is really it's huge. And so that's something that's consistent with all the Sony cameras and all the Canon cameras right now. And it has to do with the onboard app. Now, I have not tried getting into like cam rangers and stuff because honestly, it's hard to really trust. Cam Ranger is an interesting tool, and a lot of people really liked it. But I think a lot of people really liked it before the app started getting really good natively, you know. And when you take a look at Cam Ranger just as a company, it seems like it's mostly just one dude, you know. And and more power to him. I mean, you know, he found a way to build a better mousetrap, you know, when especially Canon cameras were not able to be tethered. But it's one dude, and now the apps are getting better and better. So I don't necessarily think that's a good way. It adds complication. You know, it's complication as another thing to your system. And I've always been one that's been a big proponent of you keep things simple. You know, no matter what kind of job you're doing, whether it be photo or video, keep things simple. Don't have crap hanging all over your camera if you don't need it to be there. You know, and it's just better. So I think right now you stick with the Sony bodies for the workflow reasons. I do love the RF lenses. I like the RF lenses over the G Master lenses. I just do. I think they're better lenses in most regards. I like that so many of them are stabilized, you know, in the lens, whereas most of the Sony lenses are not. That's a pro and a con, depending on how you look at it, because it makes the Sony lenses smaller and lighter. And so, if that's important to you, then that's great. For me, it's not important. I'm not trekking out into places. Everything goes in the van, so I don't mind the lens being big and heavy if it gives me the advantage of it being stabilized. But I know this is an $11 answer here, but right now I would stick with Sony. You know, for those. Oh, I'll give you another reason to stick with Sony. You know, on the side, I was going to bring this up too. With the Sony in stills mode, you can have zebras as an exposure tool, and with the Canons, you cannot. I have no idea why this is because with the Canons in video mode, all their hybrid cameras, you have zebras that you can define, you can set just like your Sony zebras. You know, you set it to a specific IRE and you know lower limit, and then it shows you. Now with the Sonys, that's really helpful because you can have that just when you're out there shooting stills. And so, especially when we're talking about real estate, something that is extraordinarily dynamic, like real estate, where you've got a room like this, which is a very dark room, and then I could have like nuclear window light blowing in through the window over here. Um, it is very helpful to know and not have to rely just on a histogram where exactly the luminance of your exposure is. And like, Canon cameras do not do that. All the way up to their current flagship, the R3, you cannot have zebras on your live view. I have no idea why, because it is such a useful exposure tool. I think Canon kind of just defines that as more of a video tool, you know, not just a useful exposure tool. So that's another reason, and that is very handy for shooting real estate. When you get used to using it and you try to do like what I did and go from Sony and see if the Canon bodies would work, you miss those zebras. Okay, King Krut Gaming. Loud and clear. Have you seen the price drop on the regular R5 and R3? I did. I saw it just, I think, because it just happened like a day ago or so. I don't know what the R5 was, because I thought the R5 was already on sale. I know there were already Canon lenses that were like $200 off for, and I thought the R5 was one of those. Yeah, and the R3 is, what is it, like $400 off or something like that. Yeah, that's pretty attractive. You know, I've eyeballed the R3 more than once. Um, I married the Canon tilt shift lenses, sold my Nikon D800 by Sony A7R to adapt. Now I have an A1. Lenses are still going strong. Love the Sony ecosystem so much better now versus 2015. Yeah, me too. So I have had the 17 tilt shift. Don't have it anymore. I still have the 24 tilt shift, which I use primarily for twilights. You know, because so the Canon 24 tilt shift and what Rob's describing is you can it's an EF mount lens, and so you can adapt it to Sony E mount with the Sigma MC11 is what I'm doing with that. And I like it for twilights because I can, you know, faux some elevation on the home. I can get a bit more of the sky in the shot, and so most of us are doing sky replacements with twilights. You know, so it works with that. But It's funny. I've heard so about the Canon 24 millimeter tilt shift specifically. I've heard Mike Kelly before say, if there was ever a perfect lens, that might be it. And boy, that's really true. It is hard to find a fault with the EF Canon 24 millimeter tilt shift, the two version of it, because there's a couple different versions. It is a really, really nice lens. It is super sharp. It's punchy. The colors are awesome. Um, the distortion is extraordinarily well corrected. So I mean, the Canon 24 tilt shift it's it's a gem. Max Mito, hey, good to see you, bud. I know you've mentioned being a realtor prior to going full time in the business, so you had some connections made. But I was wondering if you had any suggestions on marketing your services. Yeah, so I actually do. And this is a common question that I get. How do I get started in real estate photography? How do I get my first few clients? And typically when that happens, I say, I'm not really qualified to answer that because of exactly what you just said. I had connections made, and so I had a built-in audience when I first started out. But if you look back in my videos, I actually did one which is I can't think of what the title of it is. Oh, Make Your Real Estate Photography Explode in 2022. It was a series that I did, and one of those was getting clients. And in that video, I show an example of a presentation to a room full of real estate agents and how I do that. And that's a good one to reference back on. Let's see. Looks like I missed a couple comments here. King Kruk Gaming. Okay, how do you get your shadows without noise on your R5C? Uh, you're gonna have to define your question a little bit better than that. Are you talking about um, shooting video with the R5C? If you shoot video with the R5C and you're shooting in Catalog 2, you're gonna have noise. And so it's just one of those things. It's going to be part of your workflow. Hey, Cam, how you doing? So everybody should go check out Cam Simmons. Cam recently, he's somebody who, and let me apologize to you right now in front of everybody because I was a bit harsh on Cam with his when he made his switch over to Sony. And here's the thing though that I realized about that, especially when it comes to Cam. The way that he is using these cameras, the FX6 is probably the perfect camera for Cam in a lot of ways. Um, the FX6 has a beautiful highlight roll off. A7S3 is like this too. The A7S3, just the way that it approaches that white point, um, and that very soft kind of roll off that it has is very cinema camera like. And so the way that Cam is using that camera and that he's out there in the weeds and he's not lighting, um, that's pretty important. That's pretty important. So that's all I have to say about that. But it's good to see you, Cam. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Okay, I got that one. The realtor thing. Yeah, go check out that video, Max. Hey, in a market that has a bunch of established photographers. Yeah. So, really the answer to that is, with the established photographers, you just need to get a couple clients, those first couple real estate clients. And, real estate is such an extraordinarily personal business. And this is the same reason why I'm always saying that traditional client building techniques like search engine optimization, and things like that don't work especially well for real estate clients. Um, as much as just going out and getting belly to belly with them, that is what works for getting real estate clients. And so go back and watch the the video that I was talking about there. Home run trot. As always, I appreciate the hell out of depth of insight and perspective. Thanks, brother. Invaluable. I need a lens upgrade as well. My current lens is, oh, you're talking about the A6000, using it with the current lens is E-mount 3.5 to 5.6, 18 to 55, Sigma 16 millimeter 1.4, and E-mount FE 2 to 28. Yeah, so on the A6000, so the widest thing you have is a 16 millimeter, which is still going to be a 24 millimeter on the A6000. You're going to need to go wider than that. Um, so if you were to go the A7, if you were to go the A7 IV route, and you've got a 16 millimeter Sigma, is that a full frame lens? If it's a full frame lens, 16 millimeters, that's E-mount through. I think most of those are crop lenses that you said. So so my daily driver, my daily workhorse for real estate photography is the 16 to 35 G Master, and that is on the Alpha one, which is full frame. And I often don't take that lens off of my camera to shoot real estate. When I do take that lens off of my camera to shoot real estate, it is usually to instead fit the 24 to 105 f4 on it that I'm using for more detail shots. If I want to do something creative, like shoot through a doorway at something else and have a foreground element, have a certain look to it, that I'll put the 24 105 on there. Or like I was talking about the tilt shift, the 24 millimeter tilt shift, so I can get that, that perspective how I want it to get to. But the 1635 G Master, that is my daily. It's a beautiful lens. Um, I'm looking for a refresh on that one before too long. It's a pretty old lens now. D800 is an awesome body. I still have my D700. I have it with my beloved 200 macro. 200 macro. That sounds fun. So you're like, you'd be able to see some bugs eyeballs with that thing. So, um, yeah. So I actually shot Nikon before I got into Sony about 5 years ago. I shot Nikon crop bodies. A D7200, I think, was the latest one I was coming from, and it's a lovely camera. So the Nikon, the Nikon images straight out of camera are a lot like the Canon images straight out of camera. They just have that something, that just looks very just pretty. Leo, I switched from Canon to Sony. You switched from Sony to Canon. Now I have not done that. I've just been flirting around that. I have two systems right now. Now I wonder what the better decision was. Well, you'll just have to keep an eye out for latest my new videos, because I'm going to talk about that very shortly, coming up here. Rob Turner, I have a Canon 1124 mounted on an Arca Swiss rail. Crazy 11 millimeter tilt shift. 11 millimeter tilt. Oh, yeah. That's a lens that I won't be getting. Uh, are you going to get the 20 to 70? The 20, oh, the F, no, it looks weird. I think it's F4, right? It looks weird. I don't know. I don't know if it's stabilized too. I kind of saw it, I'm like, I don't know. See, 20 millimeters. See, I mean, you know why that's such a weird. Okay, I'll tell you, Cam, why that's such a weird thing to me. Because 20 millimeters at the really wide end doesn't, to me, feel wide enough. Like it doesn't feel like a 16, you know. And then 70 millimeters at the telephoto end, it's not like one of the reasons I have the 24 105 in, usually in a pouch on my belt all the time, is because I like being able to go out to that 105, and I like the compression that that gives. And 20 to 70 is kind of like, why am I not just putting a 50 on the thing and going for it? Really, it's kind of what I think about that. Put a 50 on it and move your feet. Let's see. I'm gonna try it. I think you're in San Francisco, close to it. Yeah. When the future wife and I make it back out west, we live in Houston. I'd love to take you to lunch at Zuni Cafe to show my. Hey, man, I'd love that. That's great. You and the new wife, right? You just got married in April, I think you said. Yeah, it sounds great. That 35 150 Tamron is tempting. Cam has one of those. I think I'll get it. I won't sell my Sony stuff just in case Sony makes some decent camera in the near future. The third it's okay, so the 35 to 150 Tamron, that's the f2 to f2.8 thing. Cameron, maybe can chime in. I think he likes that, and I saw a video of his where he was using it to shoot indoor concert footage, which is obviously very dark, and he was using the A7R5 and that sensor. So I had the A7R4, and I don't know, and maybe he can chime up about this too, because I know that he had the R4, now he has the R5. Haven't got the R5, but the A7R4, it's a lovely sensor. There was nothing ever wrong with that sensor. The problems with the A7R4 had everything to do with just the usability of the camera and how slow everything was, and the SD. You're dumping a 120 megabyte raw file onto an SD card. And just everything about the A7R4 was slow and kind of unstable, and so, but the sensor was never a problem. And so the A7R5 really changed that. Now the camera is usable and it still has that lovely sensor that the A7R4 did, but the A7R4 also was very noisy. And so I'm wondering if there's a difference between the noise performance on the A7R4 and the A7R5, as it pertains to the processing engine being different and such on the R5 body. But anyway, I digress. So Cam was using that lens shooting indoor concert footage, and that seems like a perfect lens to do that because you've got a really nice telephoto end that still only stops down to 2.8, and then you can go all the way to f2, for that for a lot of light. For me, I don't see myself buying that lens for a couple reasons. I've played with one in a camera shop, and it's big. It's big and it's heavy. Bigger and heavier than I thought it was going to be because Tamron lenses usually are not either of those things. So I've had like the 28 to 70 2.8, and it's small. It's a small, light, plasticky lens. The 28 to 70 2.8. So that lens is a big lens. It's a big, heavy lens. I don't necessarily want to carry a big heavy lens on me if I don't have to. Like I've said before, it doesn't matter a huge amount if I'm just going to the van and getting it, but for my purposes, it would be the auxiliary lens to something like my ultra wide that I'm shooting real estate with. And as my auxiliary lens, the 24 to 105 f4 suits me better because it's much smaller and lighter, and I don't need that low light. I'm not shooting stuff like Cam's shooting. Like for wedding photographers, I could see that lens being amazing for a wedding photographer because you can go to that f2 on there. Okay, I can appreciate Brad North. Hey, no hard feelings here, man. Sorry for the trouble around your recent videos. I'm obsessed with 35 I know you are. Great on IBIS sensors, not great on FX6 because no image stabilization. Right. And that's one of the reasons too. Like I was saying, one of the reasons I was really flirting with going over to Canon is because so many of their lenses have the image stabilization on board. Now it does make them bigger and heavier, but it's good IS too. That's the thing with the RF lenses. It works. So for stills though, it's my favorite lens ever now. That's awesome to hear, man. I mean, that's a pretty glowing recommendation actually for that lens. I just honestly, it's so big and heavy that I just really can't see. Regarding speed, it's way better now. I'm assuming you're talking about the A7R5. I shoot in lossless, large, and performs just like the Canon R5 in speed. Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. I think people look at the A7R5 as there are people who, and I know this is true because I've seen it out there, who will say, "Well, it's still the same old sensor as the A7R4, and so so what? It does the new lizard focus thing or whatever, and it's like, well, but no, you got to put it in perspective though. As the A7R4 was almost the perfect camera. And the A7R4 was throttled from being the perfect camera because it was so damn slow to work with. Um, the A7R5 fixes that, you know. So is the A7R5 now a perfect camera? For some people, yeah, I think so. For me, it's that one esoteric spec of the 1/400th mechanical flash sync because that's important to me, for my daily workflow going out there, and I do use it pretty often too, in very high dynamic situations where I want my flash, my strobe to be more powerful, that keeps me in the A1 over the A7R5. If the A7R5 had a 1/400th shutter capability on it with the mechanical flash sync, it would force me to think very hard about why I need an Alpha 1 and why I wouldn't go with the A7R5. So it is an incredible camera. The A7R5 is absolutely. Oh, getting married in April. We're about 75 days away. Well, you know, that's so here. Let me switch gears for a second and tell you something. This is experience. I've been married about 10 years. Okay, and there's going to be a time when you are approaching your wedding that your future wife that you know right now, you're not going to recognize her because she's going to be stressed out and she's going to round on you, like someday about something that's like minor. And you just got to realize it's because this wedding's coming up, and she'll get back to normal too. That's there's a happy ending there. Not that kind of happy ending. But yeah, it's cinema lens. It is cinema lens heavy, and I have. Let me see. Uh, is it in there? Yeah. Let me get this. All right. So this monster. This is the 28 to 70 f2 Canon RF. Right. It's it's when I think the 28 to 70 f2 is still bigger because it's a giant. But when I had the that Tamron lens, it kind of reminded me of this. Like this is it's hard to transfer through the screen here. I mean, I'm looking at my monitor here, how massive this and chody this lens is, the 28 to 70 f2 RF. It's an incredible lens. It is hugely problematic to try to balance it on a gimbal, say. You know? I mean, you got to do some pretty tricky counterweight work, with that thing. So, and yeah, the Tamron it's big. It's just like that. I personally didn't like the A7R. I think you mean the 4, A7R4 at all. Horrible screen, super slow. Yeah, the screen. It's funny. The screen on the A1 is like, I actually typically point to that. Okay, so on the A1, the screen is so bad. It is obviously the worst part of the camera is the screen. I mean, it's bad. And what's interesting about this is at the time that the A1 came out, Sony also revamped the A7R3 and A7R4 to the A models, A7R3A, A7R4A. And the only difference, I think, was that they had a much better screen on the thing. Now, what's significant about that with the A1 is that, okay, so we know that they had that screen at the time they released the A1. That means the A1, a $6,500 camera body, and I may be simplifying manufacturing here a little bit because I don't know if this is the case. they had to take something out in order to hit that $6,500 price point, and they sacrificed the screen on the back, and so that actually goes a lot to say about how much is packed into the A1 on especially on that sensor, is they have such a crap screen on it. I know that's a strange way of looking at that, but that's what I do. Okay, even the video is leagues better. It's weird. Oh, on the A705. Yeah, I think a lot of that must have to do with the processing engine of it. I'm thinking. The wife advice. I'm telling you, it's true. You're not going to recognize her. I mean, she'll come at you, dude. In February, a former update for the A1 should come. What would you wish for the A1? I honestly, this is an unpopular opinion, but I don't wish for anything for the A1 because I think a lot of the hemming and hawing about the A1 missing features is about like focus breathing for video, and I don't even remember what the other one, but they're like all video stuff, and the A1 is not an especially strong video camera. It never has been. That's not what its main purpose is. It is, in my opinion, the best stills camera that has ever been created. Um, and that is even against other flagships like the Z9 and the R3 and so on and so forth. I think the A1 is the best stills camera that has ever been created. Um, it can shoot very good video too. And part of the reason why I think the A1 has Philip Bloom is on this kind of tirade and a couple others too about how why is that the A7 IV has these the focus breathing features, and I forgot there was like another one. I forgot what everybody was on about. Why is it that these lesser cameras have the focus breathing feature, but the A1 doesn't? Because it paid $6,500 and this camera should do everything. And like, look, the A1 already, the A7. Okay, so let me make the comparison because I have the A7S III too. A7S III is a better video camera. It can do full frame 4K 120. The full frame 4K 60 that the A7S III does is full readout. It's not line skipped, like it's either skipped or binned that the A1 does, but it's a better quality. It's got that 12,800 native gain stage the A7S III does, that the A1's is like I think 3,200. I think it's 3,200 on the A1. So the A7S III is a much more useful video camera. It's a better video camera than the A1. The A1 is the world's best stills camera that also shoots video. So if what everybody is, hemming and hawing about is missing video features from the A1, that don't matter to me. So, I mean, so like I said, it's just an unpopular opinion, but February for more update for the A1. What do you wish for? A better screen, but they can't do that with firmware. I Day one is so damn good. I mean, it really is. I don't know what I would change about it other than the screen. Brother, we're already there. My approach has been, is there anything I can do right now to take something off your plate? I'm telling you, your better approach, kid, is silence. I ask that question probably 3 or 4 times a day. That's why silence is your better answer. Learn from the old man. I've been there. Let's see. She'll tell you when she needs something, but by you asking what she needs, that's trying to solve her problem. That's going to backfire on your ass. Any thoughts on vacation property market? If so, how the clients differ from real estate? You know what? I've done okay. So I have two clients that are property managers, and so they have investors they typically work with, and they're doing VRBOs and stuff like that. It, it's different. So it's different because here's the thing that I've learned about shooting vacation rentals. Um, they don't tell you everything up front, right? So when they say, "Oh, it's just a little two-bedroom," it's nothing special. No, it's like a little two-bedroom that is on the top of some high rise with like a gym and a juice bar and a concierge that's going to do your dry cleaning and be sure to get the movie theater that's down the street. And then we really need an aerial of the park because it's a big park and you can't get it from the ground, so you got to get an aerial. It's like, that's what I've learned, right? So I've learned to sandbag the vacation rentals when I'm quoting them. I don't have, so I have a price list. I don't have VRBOs on the price list because I want to see the thing before I give a price. That's what I've learned about vacation rentals. But um, how do clients differ from real estate? They're much more picky. I don't know why that is. Well, I think I do know why that is because this is kind of more of a this is more of a commercial job. I mean, it's more of like a job for like an architect or a designer, who I've also worked with in the past, and that the images are going to live on in marketing for a much longer period of time than typically just the very transient real estate photos. And so they're a lot pickier in that regard about what they want. And you might go back and forth like you do with some of that higher end work. You could go back like when you're shooting architecture, you're shooting interiors, that are like the higher paying interiors jobs. Um, a lot of times you'll go back and forth during the editing process, with an art director or a marketing director or something like that. They say, oh, can you take the reflection out of this wall, or can you do this, or can you do that, and you go back and forth maybe a couple times on some of those jobs. And I find myself doing that too with the vacation rentals. That's not to say that and it could just be because I'm not hugely experienced at that, you know, subset of real estate photography. So it could just be the ones that I've been shooting are like that, and those clients are like that because certainly within real estate, you have clients that act one way or the other too. Um, but that's what I've found with vacation rentals is they are typically more time intensive than just the day-to-day real estate. And if you think about why that is, it's because these images are made to live on in perpetuity much longer than real estate images where real estate images are very transient. They're there for 30 days, 60 days, place sells. Agent might use it a little bit more if they're trying to brand themselves, market themselves out of it, but that's about it. Whereas with the VRBO stuff, with the Airbnb stuff, it lives on, and so they're typically a bit more picky about it. You should be charging more. Absolutely, I do charge more for that work, and they're going to lie to you before you get there. Maybe not purposely, but but it turns out when you get there, there's always more that they want that they don't tell you when you're first talking about it. So, okay, home red trot noted. Oh, all right. See, there you go. You'll figure it out, man. We all figure out marriage. I have to go. Thanks and stars for yay. Thanks, Leo. I should probably get going too. So it's been an hour and 8 minutes, and it just so happens that yours was the last comment that came in here as I'm doing it. So thank you for your attention. Boy, we got off topic a long time ago, but as far as real estate photography in 2023 is concerned, I am cautiously optimistic because I think just to wrap up at what I was talking about at first here, I think um, the financial landscape in this country, in the United States right now, is fundamentally very strong. And that is something that the last time we had a dip in real estate, a net dip in real estate for a long period of time, that was not true. The economy and the financial health of our country was very fragile at that time, and that's just not true right now. So I think it's um, what we have right now is affordability or the lack thereof intersecting with a rising interest rate environment, and I think it's going to make its move, and then it will settle, and it will be business as usual. Okay. The king crab. You need to work on the live stamina. These are good. Should be a minute, a minimum of 2 hours. Yeah, right. I'll work on that. I'll let you know how that I'll let you know how that goes. The next hour. All right, guys.